Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom, with my co-host, Ms. Joy Langford. And today we welcome Gerhard Mayer back to the show to talk about transportation and the fact that we have no space left. So welcome back, Gerhard.
Thank you.
So
delighted to talk about it.
Yeah, let's just dive right in. We have some good transportation on the East, Midwest, West Coast, not so much. How do we fix this? Because we have too many cars on the road, let's be honest.
Well, when you say transportation, in most of the rest of the world, that means a variety of choices, right? It means everything from walking to bikes, to little vehicles, scooters, to buses, to transit, to cars, to high-speed trains. On the West Coast of America, unfortunately, it means predominantly one thing, and that's cars.
Yep.
So when we say we want to fix transportation, that means that we want to fix car congestion. And that's actually a very easy equation, right? I mean, you have a certain amount of people who need to move, and you know how much space they take to move when they're moving individually, and you know how much space there is in the city to move them in. And that equation hasn't squared for 30 years. I mean, the suburbs that is basically Southern California, they were full 30 years ago. No matter what magic we do, there is just not enough space for us all to move in. And, you know, the easy answer would, well, so we need to widen the roads. But we need so much more space that widening the roads is just a drop of water on a hot rock. You know, it just immediately evaporates, as you could tell with the 405 widening, right? Where the travel times got slower, actually, once they were done. So, I mean, if you just calculate, you know, a person in a train that moves at 50 miles an hour takes, I don't know, maybe 5 square feet to be comfortable. You know, a person in a car moving at 50 miles an hour may take as much as 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm going to ask you to be a psychologist. You're obviously very well trained in transportation, but I'm going to ask you to be a psychologist for a second, especially since you've lived in European countries, what have you. What is the psychology shift that we actually have to use to get people on public transportation? Let's say here on the West Coast in Los Angeles, where we're putting billions of dollars into projects, and then you see 3 or 4 riders, or you hear a bunch of horror stories about people pushing somebody onto the track. What is the psychology shift that we're going to also need with the transportation aspect?
Well, you need to offer, in my mind, complete solutions, not partial solutions. There is an intrinsic link between transportation and the built form, the form of the city. So the form of the city that we have really works well with cars, but not really well with anything else, because it's not dense enough. I call that the transportation, the density paradox. You know, so humans can exist from low densities to really high metropolitan densities, easy, right? You know, New York, Shanghai, people exist there easily. But transportation models don't work on that whole spectrum. A transportation model works with cars on the very low densities to sort of like slightly medium densities. That's where we are at the moment. And then the transit model to work well, which means you never have to look at a schedule. You have multiple lines available in your vicinity. You go to the traffic, everybody takes it because it's like widely shared. That works from higher densities to metropolitan densities. In between, there is a hole. That is our problem. I wrote an article about that on Planeticen a while ago. And that hole is hard to fill, because if you increase the density so that you get into the lower levels of the transit densities before you have the trains, then people will start shooting each other on the street because you cause, you know, just absolutely awful congestion. And if you build transit into the lower densities where you don't generate enough ridership, then all the right-wingers will come and say, see, people don't take trains. This is, I think, the policy problem to overcome. Of course, it's not dealt that way, but that hole is the biggest problem for us to solve. Now, once you are in the higher densities, you just need to make it convenient and you need to make it safe. And in addition to that, I think you need to provide space for all the other lower space capturing modes for transportation also. Bike paths, for instance, right? Bike paths are great, but the way we built them is we built them sort of like partially for 6 blocks. And then on the 7th block, you take your life into your own hands because you die, because you're suddenly again in traffic. Our bike paths just stop in the middle of nowhere. And then again, people come and say, hey, see, nobody takes bikes. It's not working in LA. That's nonsense, because LA is the ideal place for bikes. We have the best climate in the world. It's largely flat. With e-assist bikes, you can travel 20, 30 miles, no problem. If we just built a framework for bikes to travel safely, that would work. Yeah. The crisis is, and politicians need to lead that, if somebody builds a bike path right now, all the people in their cars will immediately start screaming bloody murder. You're taking space away from me, and I'm already so constrained. And that is the problem to overcome. It's not a unique problem. I told Wendy, in the Netherlands, I have videos for like 30, 40, 50 years ago where they had fist fights in the streets when they did the same thing. They were earlier to the draw to this. They actually had that situation where all the cars were choked with, all the streets were choked with cars, and people had fist fights, cars versus bicyclists. Parents who wanted their kids safely to bike to school versus drivers, and they really had it out in the streets. We're just 50 years later. The good thing in the Netherlands was it was led by enlightened politicians who had the interest of the general public in mind. And here people look to the next guy who screams the loudest and says they need their street back.
Yeah. We need to stop screaming at each other for, first and foremost, at least what I've noticed in this country is everything is on party lines. A lot of politics are involved, and most citizens are neutral. Most citizens want to meet in the middle. And that's what we need to promote. And with the bike lanes, they've got to be protected bike lanes. I know too many people that have been hit by cars and buses. And taking away a lane or taking away a parking lane, it could benefit because then you're removing the physical car, which, as you said, takes up a massive amount of space considering it's, one person on a bike.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a car takes up, 200 square feet when it's resting. And then the AAA tells you, or the Department of Motor Vehicles tells you have to keep 2 seconds distance to the next car. So figure out at 40 miles an hour how far a car travels in 2 seconds, right? That's the space that each car, it's a huge amount of space, right? A bicyclist takes a fraction, a train takes even a fraction of that, and pedestrians take even less. So, I mean, the equation is not going to work out in the space that we have. And the other problem is we already have an extraordinary amount of space dedicated to our mobility, which means cars in LA. I mean, the language, that's a book that claimed 2/3 of LA is actually dedicated to the car, 2/3, which then is a reason why our roads always look so bad, because you have 1/3 of the land with one-story buildings that barely can pay taxes to maintain the 2/3 of the land. That equation, for instance, in Boston looks very differently. In Boston, you have 20% of the land used for transportation, and 80% of the land with multi-story buildings generates taxes. So, of course, their roads can be good because they have money. We don't have money. We're not generating it for the support of the infrastructure.
And that needs to change because we all know our infrastructure is crumbling beneath our own feet.
Literally.
Yeah, quite literally.
It's a connection between urban form and transportation models. It needs to be looked at at the same time as a holistic solution. You can't tweak one and leave the other one alone. They will not work with each other. They will reject each other.
Well, what about cities like Los Angeles that are finally starting to put in the year 2020, put the infrastructure in place for public transportation, whereas you have cities such as New York and Boston who've had that kind of infrastructure in place since early 1900s, before like electrification was like really like a super thing. Are we too far behind the curve to make transportation happen as smoothly and efficiently as some of the other cities that we've seen? We're putting lots of money behind it, lots of bells and whistles, job growth, job creation. But in the end of the day, is it a little bit too little too late for California?
Well, a little bit of history here. Los Angeles used to be a streetcar town. Yep. Los Angeles had the largest streetcar net in the United States, larger than New York. Los Angeles, unfortunately, also, and Henry Huntington owned it at some point, all of it, and he used it to shuttle people to his real estate developments. And those neighborhoods are still the ones that we like today, the streetcar neighborhoods. because they were sort of like built on you basically took the train there and then they are walkable in a little node. And once his real estate adventure, was over, then, he sort of like backed out of that, and the streetcars fell apart. But nevertheless, we once had it. We have many right-of-ways still. We have the backbone of a rail infrastructure here. Now, unfortunately, post World War II, and I write, it's too lengthy to go into that, but there was a shift in thinking that sort of like streetcars are like a communist takeover. There was a deliberate attempt to make people sort of like fall in love with the individual automobiles. Even public space was sort of like not cool because everybody should have privatized space. And Los Angeles was the place they tried this all out. I mean, a friend of mine lives in Phoenix, and he suggested when they discussed a new rail line in Phoenix, there was an older gentleman next to him standing up, and he said, like, we don't need any of these communist streetcars here. So that still pervades that idea. The common good is something that LA tried to eliminate, and it worked for a short time for a few people. Now we need to bring it back, and now we are so spread out that even a massive investment that we are doing is not going to really make a difference. And that's why I would argue for stop making widespread investments and focus on neighborhoods and make those work functionally well, and then do another and another. So localize it, create little streetcar neighborhoods around each of the stations. And then sort of like and then transition into the rest of LA, because we have sprawled so far. I mean, the area of Los Angeles is phenomenally large, right? The settled area. I figured out if we were built like a European city, and only for half a mile circle around each transit station, with another half-mile ring like Brooklyn around it, we could probably accommodate 15 million people instead of the 10 that we are right now in 2% of the land that we use right now. I mean, LA is just wasting land left and right, but never in a way that you can use it. I mean, a traffic median is not a good thing, but it's still a lot of land. A triangle, a view triangle on a freeway is not usable, but it's a lot of land. We have wasted so much land here, and now we're out of space.
One of the things I wanted to circle back on a previous conversation where you talked about Culver City being one of the leaders in sustainable travel. And I believe that they have a dedicated bus and bike lane that is protected.
Yes.
A green strip in the road is dangerous. Cars double park in it, delivery trucks double park in it. So how did Culver do it? Other than their exceptional leadership, how did they just get it done?
No, but I think that's it. I mean, you have an enlightened population, and you have exceptional leadership that talks to them in intelligent ways. I mean, it's basically, that's what every community should do for their little districts. I'm not sure that's possible for LA because our council districts are too big. Culver City they have their council members at large. They don't have little districts, right? So everybody talks to the general population. The city is fairly compact, and they told them the truth, and so it was a public process that, got a lot of support from many people. And this is only phase 1 that they have on Washington Boulevard. Phase 2 is, I think, Sepulveda, and phase 3 is going to be Jefferson. And Jefferson is going to be doubling up as a BRT corridor, bus rapid transit corridor to the beach for the Olympics. So that's going to happen. And once they have that, they have a loop. And inside that loop, that's the next phase. And what happens inside the loop? Are we still going to drive inside the loop like we are today? I hope not.
I hope they keep it, because, I mean, a little background on me, lived in New York, lived in Boston, so I'm used to public transport. Los Angelinos are a little different. They say, I'll never get on the subway. I'll never get on a bus. No. It's faster, folks. I've driven downtown. I've driven all over. I hop on the bus. The bus is with traffic. I get that. But the second you get on that subway, or if we had a dedicated bus lane that people respected, you'd get around significantly faster than you would now.
And Wendy's really true to that, because when I first met Wendy, she owned a car, but she was leaving to go to work every day from Beverly Hills to downtown LA on the bus. So,
and I got rid of my car since then. I never used it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, on that Vienna trip that I told you about, we did a little pre-trip in May, and we tested sort of like people driving in a van, as a group, and some people of us taking public transit. The public transit beat the van every single time. We were always there first. There's no question.
Yeah.
But it's also a safety issue. I used to take the train to downtown all the time. During COVID, Metro backed off the enforcement a little bit because COVID was so difficult, and they allowed things to happen on the train that they now regret they allowed to happen. People smoking, pot, people smoking crack. Now you see people shooting up on trains, and the enforcement sort of like needs to get back to make the train safe.
Absolutely. I didn't know that was happening.
That is happening, yeah.
No.
It's not cool on the trains right now. It's like, and unfortunately, even on the Expo line, a friend of mine, teaches at USC and went from downtown to USC, and he experienced that. And he said, I'm not going to do it anymore now. I'm going to take Uber.
How is he going to take over? What is he going to do?
Well, he's going to take Uber from downtown to USC. You can take a shared car.
Uber. Sorry, I thought you said take over. And I'm like, what's he going to do?
Uber.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that will do Uber carpools. But I mean, and that's a nice Band-Aid, but we do need to actually address our transportation. And one of the things, because I'm a huge advocate for DEI and social justice, if we don't listen to the people taking the public transit, we will fail.
Yeah.
We need to start paying attention to those that take it every day, listen to their needs, their wants, and their fears. And that's what we have to do to move this forward.
Well, the attitude for public transit in LA for the longest time was that is something that's only taken by people who have no other choices. And those people are treated that way. Now, I'm very excited. I mean, nobody reacted to complaints because they say, what are you complaining about? You have no other choice anyway. Now, the Expo line to Santa Monica changed that equation a little bit. And I was very excited about that because
I loved the Expo line. Yeah.
But so that it's suddenly affluent people from Santa Monica take it to get downtown and vice versa. Those are people that will complain, they're not shy. And I was excited about them complaining because they will go to Metro and they will be listened to. Now, it's sad that this is the case and that other people are not being listened to, but it is true, right? I mean, the red line, people on the red line, subway, don't get the same attention, no matter what they say at Metro, as people who come from the west side to downtown. I think the next line that will get that treatment is the line that goes from the airport to the Expo line.
Yes. Is that the green line? I can't remember which color.
No, it's not the green line. It's sort of like, it has a new name. It's called the Crenshaw line.
K, purple, there's a few, but...
Yeah, it's not the purple, because the purple line is the subway to the sea, hopefully, in the future. It's some line, but it's the Crenshaw line. It'll start running soon. The reason why people will take that is because the airport is so awful that people will take anything other than driving in and out of the airport. So that line will be frequented. Yes. And along that stop is Inglewood, which will see a boom because that's the first real stop after the airport. And then it connects to the Expo line. That's the next line to pay attention to. I think it will make a huge difference. And West Hollywood now is heavily lobbying to extend that line into West Hollywood because that's another enlightened city that's totally landlocked.
Yes.
And
they have their own transit. They have a trolley. They have a transit line that's very successful, very popular.
And they said they will pay for the extension of the of the Crenshaw line. Just build it already. They want to have a train really badly. Once that happens, then you have the beginnings of a different net. We need a network, not lines.
Yes.
Public transit system works when it's a network, not individual lines that go point to point.
Yeah, because you and I discussed how, if I wanted to do something, let's say go to the airport, I would have to go downtown, switch lines, and pop back out again. And that's not very convenient for me. That adds time. We need something that, hubs and spokes or meshes or whatever, network, whatever you want to call it. We need to be more interconnected. And I mean, that's a lot of work. And I actually congratulate Metro for doing what they've done so far, because it's not easy, especially dealing with individual cities and getting their approval to dig under their land. Beverly Hills was a challenge, but they got it done.
Legendary.
It is legendary. And, we had a lot of opposition. I myself was just sitting quietly waiting because I'm like, I love the subway.
Yeah. Yeah, so the assumption that people wouldn't come in a car, but would come in a subway is just ridiculous. If somebody wants to come to Beverly Hills and do something bad, they can do it. We have streets.
Yeah. And quite honestly, it's easier to jump the bus than it is the subway. There's more security on the subway.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, no, I've witnessed it.
That Joy said, I think Metro is investing a lot of money. Now, is it a lot? in the global context, I'm not convinced, because, when I grew up in Vienna, a city with 2 million people, the city of Vienna built all at once 4 complete subway lines. We have 1 here in LA, and we are more than twice the size, and the region is 5 times the size. So Beijing built a complete subway network from scratch for nothing, right? So did Korea. So big investments are happening. I'm not sure our investments are that great. We haven't built great infrastructure, large infrastructure projects for a long time. But nevertheless, I don't think that would fix LA. You cannot reach every part of Los Angeles with a public transit net that you're building right now, even if we build 10 times as much, because it's not the right urban form for public transit. So what we need to do is we need to pick winners and losers. We need to say, you're going to be a transit neighborhood and you are not. And therefore you get X and therefore you get Y. And we will help both of them succeed, and we will help you transition between one and the other. But we cannot spread the little dollars that we have over everything, because it just fizzles and makes nothing in the end.
That is very true. We see a lot of fizzling. We see just things being spread out too thin.
Right.
And I agree with you. I think certain areas need to be focused on. Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean that in the second phase we couldn't pick other neighborhoods as winners, and they can lobby. Maybe we should even make competitions among neighborhoods and say, who wants it the most? If you want to be a resistor, okay, we're not going to go there. If you want to have it, we have X amount of funds, we can go there. Maybe we should do it like that rather than fight our way through the Beverly Hillses of the world, that we have to sue for 10 years.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We should actually focus on people that want it, or at least, as you said, we need to make transit attractive.
Yeah.
Unless it's, if it's something ugly and awful and people don't feel safe. And I know Metro is really working on the safety. They actually recently did a study on what women want when they travel on public transport for their safety and well-being. So I do applaud them for that as well. They're trying. It's just a huge endeavor. And to get it done it's not going to be quick or easy.
Yeah. I would take all the typical restrictions in LA, which areas to go to, away, and just say, racial or whatever they are. If Linwood wants public transit, let's build public transit to Linwood. If the West Side doesn't want public transit, well, let's go somewhere else then. Let's make other regions function well.
And then they'll see the economic boom and they'll slap themselves in the face.
Exactly. Then they see success there, and then we have 2 choices. We can accept it or we can deny it. But most people will probably say, I want some of that too.
Yeah, it's fear of missing out. People want what someone else has.
Yeah.
We will definitely see that. So what do you see the future of transportation in LA? What would you like to see ultimately if you just had ultimate control?
Immediately, a complete bike network that is safe. A complete bike network that is safe, that's heavily promoted, and then get a lot of people. I think we would fix a lot of our traffic jams by getting, if you get 20% of the people off the roads suddenly work again. Yeah. Just give them dedicated bike paths and I would travel. It's easy in LA. I'd get an e-assist bike and I'd be all over the place if I don't die.
I do. I walk everywhere because I'm kind of afraid to get on a bike around here, just because I've seen people run stop signs. I saw a kid on a scooter yesterday, like an actual moped, stop at the red light, look both ways, and go through it. And I'm like, that's not how this works. Yeah. It's not optional.
To behave too. So after a bike network, I would then say, let's build nodes around our transit stations and around our high capacity transit, which is the trains. Let's build nodes around each one of our train stations and then make the bus system feed into those nodes. Don't do parallel runs that go all back to Union Station, to Metro headquarters. Drop you off at that train and then take the train to Union Station. And maybe run the trains on higher headways with longer trains if the capacity needs to be increased. But make it a genuine, integrated, organized, and coordinated transit system, not individual lines that give you a 1-seat ride from your home to wherever you need to go.
We also need all the counties to get together. There's a lot of infighting of, no, you're not putting that train there. No, we want this one over here.
I would turn that around. I would say work with them and let them compete for funds and for attention. And if they don't, then carve them out and let them be an oasis of car congestion if that's what they want to be. Why fight with them all the time? We need to move forward. There's a huge connection between climate change and the way we build our cities, and that has to do with transportation. A person in LA has a carbon footprint that's 6 times as big as in any average European cities, and even bigger with some Asian cities. That is exclusively related to our transportation sector, almost exclusively related. So we need to get out of our cars if we want to have a planet that's worth living on.
I'm glad you brought up the carbon aspect because, buildings comprise about 40% of our emissions or pollution, let's call it what it is. And transportation is the other 40% or so of our pollution. So it's 80% right there.
Yep.
That we need to address.
Transportation means cars in LA. I mean, that's our problem. I actually have seen the state puts out these breakdowns of where's our carbon footprint coming from, and I always see the biggest wage is transportation. So that's what you attack first. And yet we don't talk about it, right? We have attention on all the other sectors that make these little tiny slices, right? So what if we reduce 1% to 0.5%, right? We need to attack the 40. We need to get the 40 to 10.
Yeah. Absolutely, because that's the only way we're going to solve this. And also, because people who want to do, net positive carbon, where they buy credits or something, credits are fine, but it's not an ultimate resolution.
No.
We actually need to stop generating these pollutants, these emissions, in order to combat what's already happening up in the atmosphere.
What else? The difference between a congested road with cars that run on gasoline and a congested road with electric self-driving cars, they look exactly the same.
That is true. The sizing, and we have big cars in America. I remember the first time I went to Europe, I'm like, they're so little here, little tiny cars. But, we need to rethink that as well. Safety doesn't necessarily mean you drive a tank. You can have a safe car be little. And there's actually, there's a company in Wales called 𝑤𝒉𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒈, all electric, no, hydrogen cars, they're adorable. And they're little, little tiny things. And so that's a good alternative.
Since I have these statistics in my head right now from Vienna, because we're going there soon, in Vienna, more than 60% of the population lives in public housing and takes public transit. There's no stigma attached to it, right? And that's why the whole city works. There's room for people to move, to walk, they have parks, all that stuff works because there's still people who drive occasionally, but not all the time.
You don't need to. If you have things within distance that you can get to, I'm a huge advocate. If I go to the store often, I love cooking and baking, I will walk to the grocery. And people ask me, like, you walked? I'm like, it's a 10-minute walk.
The best climate in the world.
Yeah. And I have to carry some bags back, but you know what? It's good exercise. Gets me moving. Yeah. I think people need to start realizing that.
Yeah, I mean, transportation there's no magic to it. It's a simple equation. We just have to get over the fact that we look at cars only. If we look at all other available means, we'll have it solved in nothing, right? I mean, it's easy. Yeah. But as long as we look at transportation, it has to work with cars. That's not going to work out.
And we need buy-in. So, Joy, I want you to close this out because you are the native Los Angelino, born and raised. How do we get people on board?
Yeah, we definitely need a shift. There are a lot of shifts that we need as far as how we feel socially about having a car, the materialism of having a car, what kind of car you're driving. This is a pretty materialistic place. So until we can figure out a way to make a shift to get people to shift into that non-materialism and just worry about getting to work or getting to where they have to go, we're going to have this issue. So nor am I a psychologist, but the problem is pressing, and it really starts with our psyche and how we change our psyche to match that of other global citizens. So
we
Gerhard,
need to
I'm very thankful that you came on and explained again. And some of these other projects start coming up. I'd really like to get your take on them as projects begin to finish up with Metro, with the LAX line, all of the other transportation hubs that are going on here in Southern California. I think your take is key.
Yes.
Well, I like chatting with you. If you want to invite me again, this is easy. I just want to say a ray of hope. The young people that I see are much, much less attached to the cars than the older people. And that's actually really good. And I think the car industry is alarmed about that. They have started various initiatives, to get them back hooked on the automobile. The young people aren't having it. Give them a bike lane and an e-assist bike or an electric scooter, and I think like 80% of them will take that.
We just have to accommodate for the elderly who cannot hop on a scooter.
Well, they have room to drive then.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't mean
Valid
that
point.
everybody needs to hop on a scooter.
That is very true. I mean, I myself have I have poor balance, so me on a scooter would be a poor choice. But I probably would the e-bike. I would definitely check that out. As long as there's a protected bike lane. I'm a huge advocate for protected bike lanes. You gotta have that. Yeah. Well, on that, guys, Gerhard, we will definitely have you back. I love talking to you. Your knowledge base is vast and important. So I thank you for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
And Joy,
thank you.
Joy, thank you for coming and sacrificing your morning. I know you're a busy gal, so I do appreciate that. And my co-host, so I do appreciate that again. And guys, we'll see you guys next time. I'm Wendy Nystrom with Environmental Social Justice. Y'all take care.
Bye now.